My name is Derek Coleman. I'm 49 years old. I live in the Ballantine area of South Charlotte, North Carolina. The day my sister-in-law slapped me across the face in front of my daughters was the day 17 years of silence came to an end. And I promise you, that silence had cost a great deal more than she ever knew. Welcome to the channel. Get comfortable, and keep one thing in mind as you listen. The people in this story had every chance to do right. They simply chose otherwise. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Trust me, you're going to want to stay for this one. But let me back up, because if I start at the slap, you'll miss everything that made it matter. I own an IT compliance firm on South Tryon Street. 11 full-time employees, 3 major corporate contracts, and a reputation that took me 15 years to build from nothing. Absolute nothing. On Saturday mornings, I coach my youngest daughter's soccer team at the fields off Ballantine Commons Parkway. My life, by any honest measure, is a good one. And at the center of all of it is Michelle. Michelle Coleman, 43. Sharp as a tack, laughs with her whole body, makes the best smoked brisket sliders you have ever put in your mouth. We've been married 17 years. And I mean married, not coexisting, not tolerating each other. Actually, genuinely, embarrassingly in love. The kind of love that makes our friends roll their eyes when we walk into a room together. Then there are my girls. Jordan is 12, she's serious and precise, and already corrects my grammar at the dinner table. Mia is 9. She is pure chaos wrapped in pigtails, and she is, without competition, the funniest human being I have ever met. I adopted both of them, Michelle and I together, after we spent the first 5 years of our marriage trying everything else. Michelle has a medical condition that made pregnancy impossible. We grieved that quietly, the two of us, behind a closed door where nobody's opinion could reach us. Then we made a decision. We chose our daughters on purpose. And every single day since, I have chosen them on purpose. I need you to understand that before we get to anything else. Because everything that follows, every quiet decision, every signature, every consequence, flows from that one fact. Now, Denise Whitfield. Denise is Michelle's older sister. 46 years old, lives over in Matthews on the east side of Charlotte, and she's got 3 boys who keep her hands full. The older 2, Caleb and Nathan, are out of high school. Ethan is the youngest, 13. Denise is married to a man named Gary. For a long time, Gary was the golden boy of that family, doing very well in commercial real estate, driving the flashy cars, treating every room he entered like a stage built specifically for him. But about 3 years ago, Gary got hit with a serious compliance violation at his firm. He lost his job, and the industry quietly closed its doors on him. Since then, he's been hustling independent commissions, and things have not been the same. He carries the anxious energy of a man who peaked years ago and is drowning in the effort of hiding it. And Denise, God bless her, has never liked me. Not from the beginning. When I met Michelle, I was 32 and broke in that specific way. That's embarrassing. Not homeless broke. Asking your girlfriend to cover the check broke. Starting a business on credit cards and stubbornness broke. Michelle was doing fine. Steady salary, a decent apartment near South End, and a family that had decided, before I ever opened my mouth, that I wasn't good enough for her. Denise led that committee. She never said it outright. People like Denise never do. It lived in the way she looked at me across dinner tables, the way she spoke to Michelle as if I weren't in the room. The polite questions that were actually weapons. So Derek, is the business still struggling? Delivered with a smile that made you feel you were supposed to thank her for asking. I made a decision back then that I held to for 17 years. I was not going to fight Denise. I was not going to give her the satisfaction of a scene. I loved Michelle too much to make her choose between peace and her husband's pride. So I stepped back, way back. At family gatherings, I was pleasant, I was present. I stayed out of Denise's orbit and let Michelle manage her own family. And it worked, mostly. What Denise never knew, what she never bothered to find out, because she had already decided I was nobody, was that the business eventually did very well, better than well. While she was still treating me like a charity case her little sister had dragged home, I was signing contracts that would have made her eyes water. When Denise and Gary hit financial trouble a few years back, mortgage problems, Ethan's private school tuition in Huntersville getting out of hand, they went to Michelle. Of course they did, and Michelle came to me. Baby, I know it's a lot to ask. Just handle it, I told her. Take it from our account, give it to them, and let's keep the peace. I know how that sounds, and I knew how it looked. Michelle handed Denise money from a joint account that Denise assumed was mostly Michelle. I let her think that. It was easier than the conversation we would have had to have otherwise. So Denise kept believing her little sister was her financial lifeline. and she kept believing that her little sister's husband was just some quiet man who tagged along. That arrangement went on longer than I care to admit. Mortgage shortfalls, tuition installments, a couple of emergencies that Gary would call Michelle about directly. Never me, never Derek, because in Denise's version of the world I was furniture, expensive furniture as it turns out, but still furniture. The Sunday everything cracked open started like every other June Sunday in North Carolina. Loud and hot before 10 in the morning. The cookout was at Michelle and Denise's mother's place up in Concord. She's got a big older home with a massive backyard and a covered patio, and it was a full house. A good crowd of extended family, aunts, uncles, longtime family friends. The smell of brisket and smoked sausage was rolling off the pit before we even got out of the truck. Somebody had a Bluetooth speaker going. Kids were everywhere. I was in a good mood, genuinely. I'd closed a solid contract the week before. The girls had been great all morning, and Michelle was wearing this yellow sundress that made me feel like I was 32 again, minus the broke part. I had zero reason to expect anything other than a normal Sunday. I grabbed a plate of sausage links and drifted toward the back fence, where a few of the guys were arguing about whether the Panthers had any shot this season. I had opinions, I shared them. Life was good. I didn't even notice Denise watching me from across the yard. I noticed Mia first. She came running at me from the side of the house, and I knew immediately, before she even reached me, that something was wrong. 9-year-old girls running at their fathers at cookouts are either showing you something exciting, or something is very wrong. The way Mia's face looked, it wasn't exciting. I set my plate down and caught her. Hey, what's wrong? What happened? She was crying, not the dramatic kind, the quiet kind children do when they're genuinely hurt and trying to hold it together. That kind is worse. It took me a minute to get it out of her. Then she told me what Ethan had said, standing right in front of Jordan and 2 of their cousins, clear as day. You're just charity cases. My mom said your real parents didn't want you. You don't even belong in this family. I felt something shift in my chest. And I want to be precise about what I felt, because it wasn't just anger. It was something colder and quieter than anger. It was the feeling of a man who has absorbed 1,000 small insults for 17 years, and is now watching those insults land on his 9-year-old daughter's face. I kissed Mia's forehead. I told her to go stay with her mother. Then I walked over to where Ethan was standing, with a couple of other kids near the fence. I didn't yell. I didn't grab him. I put one arm gently around Mia, who had followed me, despite what I'd said, and placed a calm hand on Ethan's shoulder so he would look at me instead of his friends. Hey, I said, look at me. He looked up. These girls carry my name. They belong here just like everyone else. Don't you ever say that again? That was it. That was all I said. I don't know what Denise saw from across that yard. I don't know what version of events played out in her head in the 3 seconds between seeing me and reaching us. But what happened next took the entire backyard from loud to silent in less than 2 seconds. She grabbed Ethan away from me so hard he stumbled. Then she turned and slapped me, open palm, hard enough that I heard it before I felt it. The yard went dead quiet. Don't you dare touch my son, you pathetic loser. Her voice was shaking. Not with fear, with fury. You're not even a real father anyway. You just adopted them because you couldn't give my sister a real family. I touched my cheek, and before I could even process the sting, Michelle was moving. She didn't freeze. She rushed into the space between us, her face pale with shock and rage, pushing past her sister. Denise, what is wrong with you? Michelle shouted, her voice trembling but fierce. What did you just do? In front of my children? Denise didn't even look at her. She kept her wild eyes locked on me. I took a slow breath, gently drew Michelle back behind my shoulder, and looked at Denise. I am giving you exactly 10 seconds to get out of my sight, I said, my voice dead calm, before I call the police and have them walk you off your mother's property in handcuffs. That's when Gary materialized with his beer, stepping quickly into the middle to shield Denise, chest puffed out. Whoa, Derek, let's not do anything stupid here, man. Relax. He pointed a finger at me. She's just a protective mother. You put your hands on our kid first. Don't be a drama queen, bringing police into a family matter. Just drop it. I looked at Gary for a long moment. The music was still playing from the speaker. Somewhere on the other side of the yard, a kid laughed at something, not knowing what had just happened over here. I smiled. Since you brought it up, I said quietly, let's talk about what a real father does. I turned to my daughters. Girls, get your things. Michelle was already moving toward me, and I want you to stay right here. Because what happened in the 2 weeks after we walked off that property, that's when everything Denise Whitfield thought she knew about her life started coming apart. Some people don't realize they've been living on borrowed grace until the grace stops. And by then, the bill is already due. We pulled out of that Concord driveway in complete silence. Not the uncomfortable kind. Not the kind where two people are fighting and nobody wants to go first. This was the silence of a family that had just been hit by something and needed a minute to breathe before figuring out what to do next. Jordan was in the back seat, staring out the window. Mia had her head on her sister's shoulder with her eyes closed. Michelle sat in the passenger seat with her hands folded in her lap, very still, in the way she gets when she's feeling something too big to talk about yet. I kept both hands on the wheel and drove south on I-485 toward Ballantyne. The Charlotte skyline flickered in the distance the way it always does on a clear June evening, purple and gold, and completely indifferent to the fact that my face was still stinging. I didn't say anything about what I was going to do. Not yet we got home. I grilled the girls some chicken fajitas, because life continues, and 9 and 12-year-olds still need to eat, regardless of what their aunt did at a cookout. We sat at the kitchen table, the four of us. Mia ate like nothing had happened because she was 9, and chicken fajitas are chicken fajitas. Jordan was quiet, which meant she was processing. That's what Jordan does. After they were in bed, Michelle found me in the kitchen. She leaned against the counter and looked at me with those eyes that have always been able to read me like a lease agreement. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm fine, Derek." I looked at her. "I'm fine, I promise." She was quiet for a second then. "I am so sorry. I should have said more." "I should have. You didn't do anything wrong." "I know. It's okay." She stopped. "It's not okay." Her voice cracked just slightly on that last word. "She said that in front of our daughters, Derek. She called you. She said you weren't a real." She stopped herself. I walked over and held her for a minute. Just held her. Then I went to my home office, opened my laptop, and pulled up the bank portal. I want to be clear about something. What I did next wasn't rage, it wasn't petty. It wasn't a man throwing a tantrum because his feelings got hurt at a cookout. It was a decision made by a father who had just watched his 9-year-old daughter cry because of words that came directly from her aunt's mouth. Words Ethan didn't invent. Words he heard at home. I pulled up every recurring transfer connected to Denise and Gary's account, the monthly mortgage assistance, the tuition installments for Ethan's private school up in Huntersville, the occasional emergency transfers that had stopped feeling like emergencies about 2 years ago. I canceled every single one, all of them, gone. I closed the laptop, went to bed, and slept better than I had in months. The first week was quiet on their end. No calls, no texts, nothing. I figured Denise was too proud to reach out and too angry to think straight. Gary was probably telling her it would all blow over, that Derek would calm down, that Michelle would smooth it out like she always did. They probably poured themselves drinks and decided to wait it out. I went to work. I coached Mia's Saturday soccer practice at the fields off Ballantyne Commons. I took Jordan to Park Road Books because she'd been hunting a specific novel for 3 weeks. Sunday, I smoked a brisket in the backyard for 5 hours and did not think about Denise Whitfield once. Not once. It was the second week when the dominoes started falling. I know this because Michelle started getting texts, then calls. Then the calls got longer, and I could tell by the way Michelle's jaw tightened during them that Denise's tone was shifting from cold to something more frantic. I didn't ask for details. Michelle would tell me when she was ready. On a Tuesday, about 2 weeks after the cookout, Michelle came home from meeting a friend for lunch down in South End, and she had a look on her face I hadn't seen in a very long time. Not sad, not angry, done. Denise was there, she said, setting her keys on the counter. I looked up from my laptop. At the restaurant, she showed up, didn't call ahead, just showed up and sat down across from me. I waited. She cornered me, Derek. Michelle pulled out a bar stool and sat down slowly, like she was setting something heavy on the floor. She went on for 10 minutes. About you, about how you're being childish, about how you're punishing her whole family because your pride got bruised over, she called it. A little family argument. A little family argument. The woman assaulted me in front of 30 people and half a dozen children, and it was a little family argument. She said her mortgage payment is late, Michelle continued. The school sent Ethan's family a final notice on tuition, and apparently Gary told her, "It's your fault, you set them up to fail." I said nothing. She asked me why I was letting my deadbeat husband ruin their lives. The kitchen was very quiet. "What did you say?" I asked. Michelle was still for a moment, and I watched something move across my wife's face. Something I can only describe as 17 years of patience reaching its absolute limit. Like a dam that had held everything it was designed to hold, then held some more, and was now, finally, quietly, letting go. "I told her the truth," Michelle said. I straightened slightly. "Michelle." "All of it, Derek." Her eyes were steady, no tears, just clarity. She needed to hear it. I'm done protecting her from. We moved out to the back porch later that evening, 2 glasses of sweet tea sitting untouched between us. I wasn't at that restaurant in South End, but as the crickets started up, Michelle walked me through every single word she had handed her sister. When Denise finished her performance at that table, the sighing, the guilt-tripping, the dramatic pauses, the don't you care about your own family. Michelle looked at her across the table and said, "It was never my money, Denise." Denise blinked. "What? Every dollar. Every single dollar that kept your lights on and paid Ethan's tuition and covered your mortgage. That was Derek's money, not mine. His. He told me to let you think it was me. He didn't want the drama. He was protecting me from having to deal with your reaction to the truth." Silence. The husband you called a loser at a backyard cookout in front of his children has been quietly funding your life for years while you were looking down at him, while you were letting your son repeat whatever you say about him at home into our daughters' faces. That was him paying for it. Denise apparently opened her mouth. Michelle didn't let her get there. "And while we're talking about real fathers, you want to go there?" "Really?" Michelle leaned forward. "We adopted because I am the one who cannot have children. My body, my condition, my limitation. Derek has spent years letting this entire family quietly assume it was his problem, because he knew how you'd treat me if you knew the truth. He protected my dignity from people exactly like you, Denise. He never said a word, not once, not to you, not to anyone. He is twice the man your husband will ever be." When Michelle got to that part of the story, sitting on our back porch, she stopped talking for a second. I didn't say anything either. I looked out at the yard where my daughters had been running around an hour earlier, and I felt something I genuinely wasn't expecting. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just the particular weight of being truly known by somebody. Of having your wife look at the people who dismissed you and say, "You never saw him at all." "Was she crying?" I asked eventually by the end. Michelle took a sip of her tea. "I didn't wait around to watch," I nodded. We sat there a while longer. The neighbor's dog barked at something down the street. Mia had left her soccer ball in the middle of the lawn again. Normal life, continuing. But here's what I knew that Michelle didn't mention at that South End table. Because Michelle didn't know it yet. The same day she had that conversation with her sister, I had made 2 phone calls. The first was to my attorney, a sharp woman named Diane Marsh, who has handled my business contracts for 8 years and has a voice that makes insurance adjusters nervous. I told her what happened at the cookout. I told her I had 3 longtime family friends who were standing right there, completely sober, who had already agreed to provide written statements. I asked her to move forward. She didn't hesitate. "I'll contact the office today." The second call was to the bank. When Denise and Gary's mortgage hit a restructuring agreement 2 years ago, the lender required a co-signatory to qualify for the modified term. Gary went to Michelle. Michelle came to me. I signed on because, say it with me, I loved my wife and I wanted to keep the peace. Well, peace had been officially canceled. I called the lender holding their mortgage modification. Because Gary had lost his job 3 years ago over that compliance violation, he had hidden his true income status from the bank during the restructure, using my clean credit as a shield. I informed the bank's fraud and risk department that, as a co-signatory, I was formally reporting a material change in the primary borrower's employment that had been concealed. I dropped a mountain of documentation on their desk. The bank representative on the phone was terrifyingly quiet. Just facts, process, and timeline. They would be defaulting the modification by Monday. That's all it was on my end, too. Facts, process, timeline. I hung up, went back to my desk, and finished the compliance report I'd been working on before the call. We had a client presentation Thursday morning, and I do not let personal situations bleed into professional ones. That's a discipline I built a long time ago. Back when I was 32 and broke, and everyone was watching to see if I'd fail. I didn't fail then, and I wasn't planning to start now. If you've been listening for a while, drop your thoughts in the comments, hit the like button while you're at it, and make sure you're subscribed, because this is where everything turned. Here's what I want you to understand about the 2 weeks following that cookout in Concord. Nothing I did was dramatic, nothing was loud, no scenes, no confrontations, no angry texts at midnight, no showing up anywhere I wasn't supposed to be. I went to work, I came home. I helped Jordan with her homework. I watched Mia's soccer game and yelled encouragement from the sideline like I always do. I cooked dinner 3 nights out of 7 because I genuinely enjoy cooking and Michelle works hard. I was just living my life. But underneath the normal surface of things, every decision I'd made was moving the way water moves. Quietly, steadily, and with absolute certainty about where it was going. Denise and Gary just didn't know it yet. That changed when Gary called. It was a Thursday evening. I was in the driveway cleaning out the truck when my phone buzzed. A number I recognized. I almost didn't answer. Then I decided why not. Gary Derrick. A pause. The specific pause of a man who rehearsed this call and already forgot his line. Hey, look, Denise and I were thinking. Maybe we should all sit down, talk this through. Clear the air, you know. Somewhere neutral. Nice restaurant. Our treat. Our treat. I almost laughed. I literally almost laughed, standing in my driveway on a Thursday evening in Charlotte, North Carolina. Sure, Gary, I said. Let's sit down. Another pause. He sounded relieved, which told me everything I needed to know about what he thought this meeting was going to be. Great, great, man. Saturday work for you? There's a place up on Lake Norman. Saturday's fine. Awesome. We'll get a reservation. Hey, and Derek, listen. We're really looking forward to clearing this up, okay? We're family. Family. I ran my cleaning cloth across the hood of the truck. See you Saturday, Gary, I said and hung up. I stood there in the driveway for a moment. The June evening was warm, and the neighborhood was doing its usual quiet thing. Sprinklers somewhere, a car passing, somebody's wind chime going. They thought they were coming to negotiate. They had no idea they were walking into a closing statement. There is a specific kind of calm that settles over a man who has already made every decision that matters and is simply waiting for the other people in the room to catch up. That's exactly where I was on Saturday evening. The restaurant Gary picked was the Port City Club, up in Cornelius on the shore of Lake Norman. Outdoor terraced seating, water view, the kind of place with a sunset so good it almost makes bad company tolerable. Almost. It's the kind of spot people choose when they want the setting to do the emotional heavy lifting for them. Neutral ground with a pretty backdrop. Smart choice by Gary's standards, which tells me Denise picked it. Michelle and I got there first. We always do. I don't like walking into rooms where other people are already settled and comfortable. We got a table on the outer terrace, ordered waters, and watched the sun begin its slow descent over Lake Norman, turning everything copper and gold. Michelle had been quiet on the drive up, not the broken kind of quiet, the resolved kind. She'd spent 2 weeks processing everything. The cookout, the ambush at the restaurant, the 17 years before both of those. And she'd come out the other side with her jaw set in a way I recognized. That was the jaw of a woman who had made her own decisions. I reached across the table and held her hand. She squeezed back without looking up from the menu. Good enough for me. Denise and Gary arrived 11 minutes late. Gary was in a button-down he'd clearly ironed specifically for tonight, which for Gary is the equivalent of showing up in a tuxedo. Denise had her hair done. She was holding her purse with both hands in front of her, like a shield. They'd rehearsed this. I could tell immediately. They had the careful, slightly too composed energy of people who'd practiced their lines in the car on the way up. Gary went for the handshake first. Firm 2 pumps, eye contact, the whole production. Derek, good to see you, man, really. He turned. Michelle. Michelle nodded once. The temperature at table dropped approximately 4 degrees. Denise slid into the chair across from me and gave me the specific smile of someone who needs something from you and hates that fact with every cell in her body. Derek, she said. Denise, we ordered. The waiter was cheerful and completely unaware he was serving what was essentially a sentencing hearing with a lake view. Gary got a beer. Of course he did. Denise ordered white wine. Michelle ordered the salmon. I ordered the beef tenderloin because I was genuinely hungry and saw no reason to let the occasion ruin my appetite. We made approximately 4 minutes of small talk about the weather and Charlotte traffic before Gary cleared his throat and decided it was time. He squared his shoulders. He leaned forward slightly, hands folded on the table, the picture of reasonable sincerity. Look, man, we know things got heated that Sunday. Denise shouldn't have. What happened shouldn't have happened. Okay, we apologize for that. He glanced at Denise, who nodded on cue, like they'd choreographed. But you've got to understand, she was just stressed. She saw you grab Ethan's arm and she reacted. She's a mother, you know. And honestly, he paused here for effect. Cutting off the kid's tuition over a family argument? That's a bit extreme, don't you think? You're kind of punishing the whole family because your pride got hurt. Another pause. Then the real line, the one I could tell he'd been saving. It almost feels like you set us up to look bad. He sat back. Denise was nodding along slowly, her wine glass stem rotating between her fingers, and there it was. The full performance. Start with a half apology, pivot to justification, then land on the implication that I was actually the problem. Classic. I let the silence sit for a moment. I picked up my water glass, took a slow sip, and set it back down precisely where it had been. Then I smiled, the same smile from the backyard in Concord. Gary, my voice was completely level. You didn't invite me here to apologize. He blinked. What? No, man, we genuinely. You invited me here because your mortgage is due. I kept my eyes on him, calm as a board meeting. You're not sorry Denise assaulted me. You're sorry that I'm the one holding the checkbook. Dead silence. The table next to us erupted in laughter about something. Somebody's birthday, balloons, a completely different universe. Denise's wine glass stopped rotating. Now hang on, Gary started. I'm not finished. I said it quietly. No edge, no heat. Just a statement of fact. And Gary, to his credit, or maybe just to his instinct for self-preservation, stopped talking. I looked at Denise directly. For the first time in 17 years, I wasn't stepping back. I wasn't managing the temperature. I wasn't protecting anyone's feelings at the expense of my own. You stood in front of 30 people, including my daughters, and told me I wasn't a real father. You said I gave those girls a charity home because I couldn't give your sister a real family. I paused. I want to make sure we're both remembering the same moment before I continue. Denise opened her mouth. Don't, Michelle said. One word, quiet as a closed door. Denise closed her mouth, I continued. You've believed for 17 years that I was nobody, that Michelle carried this family, that I was furniture that came with your sister when she walked through the door. I tilted my head slightly. I let you believe that. That's on me. I thought I was keeping the peace. What I was actually doing was financing a version of reality that was comfortable for you and invisible to me. That ends tonight. Gary shifted in his seat. The rehearsed composure was starting to crack at the edge. The police report has been filed, I said. Gary's beer glass paused halfway to his mouth. The district attorney's office is reviewing the case. Assault charges, Gary. Not a family dispute, not a heated moment. Criminal charges. Because what Denise did at that cookout was a crime, regardless of what she told herself about why she did it. I folded my hands on the table. I have 3 longtime family friends who are standing right there and have already provided written statements. I also have 2 other family members who've agreed to confirm the sequence of events. What I don't have is any interest in pretending this was a misunderstanding. Denise's face had gone the color of the tablecloth. Derek, she started, and her voice had completely lost the practiced tone from 10 minutes earlier. This was the real voice, smaller, tighter. Derek, look, I know I went too far. I know that, but criminal charges? We're family. You told my 9-year-old daughter her real parents didn't want her. I said it without raising my voice, without flinching. You said that to a child, through your son. Then you walked across a yard and hit me in front of her. I let that land. So I need you to understand something, Denise. This isn't about family politics anymore. The copper evening light was doing beautiful things over Lake Norman. A boat moved slowly across the water below us. Gary set his beer down. Okay, Derek, I hear you. The charge is all right. That's serious. We understand that. But let's talk about the financial stuff. The mortgage, Ethan's school. Those are real consequences for our kid. He didn't do anything. Ethan repeated what he heard at home, I said. Those are his consequences, and yours. But the cosign is done. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and placed a single folded document on the table. I slid it across to Gary. That's the formal notification from my attorney. When you hid your job loss from the lender during the modification restructure, Gary, you committed bank fraud. I reported it to their risk department last Tuesday. My name is officially cleared from the liability, and the bank has revoked the modified terms, effective immediately. Their acceleration warning follows separately. You may have already received it. If not, it'll arrive Monday. Gary unfolded it with hands that weren't entirely steady. He stared at it. I watched the color leave his face in real time, like someone had pulled a plug somewhere. The foreclosure process begins when the bank initiates it, I said. That timeline is between you and your lender. I'm no longer part of that conversation. You can't. Gary looked up. Derek, you can't just, we have a kid in that house. You have a kid in that house, I said. Which is exactly the kind of thing a real father thinks about before the damage is done. Not after. That one landed where it was supposed to. Denise made a sound that wasn't quite a word. Her eyes were glassy now. The wine glass had been set down and she wasn't touching it. The monthly transfers are canceled. The tuition assistance is canceled. Every financial arrangement that existed between our households existed because I loved my wife enough to keep the peace at my own expense. That arrangement required a basic level of respect as its foundation. I looked at her steadily. You demolished that foundation in about 45 seconds at a backyard cookout. Derek, please. Denise's voice actually broke. The practiced composure, the performance, the entitlement, all of it gone. What was left underneath was just a woman staring at consequences she never genuinely believed would arrive. Please, I'm asking you. I'll apologize, formally, publicly, however you want. I'll call the DA myself. I'll Derek, our house. And here is the part I want you to pay attention to, because I felt something in that moment that surprised me. Not satisfaction, exactly. Not the sharp, hot feeling of victory. Something quieter. The feeling of a door closing on a room you've been trapped in for a very long time, and finally don't have to go back to. I looked at my sister-in-law, really looked at her, and I felt nothing that required me to be cruel. I had said everything that needed saying, clearly, calmly. With receipts, I stood up, I buttoned my jacket. I spent 17 years protecting your feelings, I said. That's over now. From this point forward, I'm only protecting my own family. That's my wife. And my daughters, who belong in every room they walk into. I picked up my phone from the table. Good luck with the bank, and good luck paying for dinner. I extended my hand to Michelle. She took it without a single moment of hesitation. She picked up her purse, stood, and rose to her full height in that way she does when she is completely certain about something. Denise reached out and touched her arm. Michelle, please, just. Michelle looked at her sister's hand on her arm. Then she looked at Denise. I love you, Michelle said simply, but I'm done managing what you refuse to take responsibility for. She stepped away from the table. We walked through the restaurant together, past the birthday balloons, past the cheerful waiter, who called out, "Have a great evening," and out into the warm Carolina night. The valet brought the truck around. I tipped him. We got in. I pulled out of the parking lot and headed back down toward the highway. Michelle was quiet for about 2 minutes. Then she said, "Good luck paying for dinner," and then she started laughing. Not the polite kind, the real kind. The full-body kind that I fell in love with 20 years ago in a little coffee shop on East Boulevard, when she was 23 years old and I was the broke guy at the next table who asked if he could borrow her phone charger. I started laughing too. We laughed for about a mile before either of us said another word. Here's what happened after. The DA's office moved forward. Denise accepted a plea agreement, a formal assault charge, community service, and a protective order that kept her at a specific distance from me and my daughters for 14 months. She signed it. No trial, no public drama, just paperwork and consequences. The mortgage. The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings 6 weeks after that Saturday dinner on Lake Norman. Gary found a smaller rental down in Rock Hill, just across the state line, about 25 minutes from where they'd been living. Ethan switched from private school to the local public school in their new district. From what Michelle heard through other family, he's doing fine. In fact, about 3 months after that cookout, Ethan sent Jordan and Mia a handwritten note. Michelle showed it to me. He apologized. Not the way his father apologized at that restaurant, performing, calculating, looking for a return on the investment of the words. He apologized the way 13-year-olds apologize when someone has actually gotten through to them. Clumsy, sincere, real. I kept that note. It reminded me that the boy was never the villain. He was just a kid who'd been handed the wrong script by the adults in his life. And maybe, finally, someone had handed him a better one. I didn't gloat, not once, not to other family members, not on the phone, not in a single text. That's not what this was. This was never about breaking Denise. It was about stopping her. Mia asked me, one evening, about a month later, while I was helping her with a school project at the kitchen table. She looked up from her poster board and said, completely out of nowhere, "Daddy, are we a real family?" I put down the glue stick. "Come here," I said. She climbed into my lap, 9 years old, still small enough to do that. And I held her the way I've held her since the day we brought her home. "We are the realest family I know," I told her. "You understand me?" She thought about it for a second, with that serious little face she made. "Yeah," she said. "Okay." Then she climbed back down and went straight back to her poster board. "Yeah, okay." But her question stayed with me long after she'd forgotten, she asked. "Because I've had time now, real time, quiet time, to sit with everything that happened, and I want to leave you with what I actually learned. Not the satisfying part, the true part. Here's the first thing. For 17 years I believed my silence was strength, and in a way it was. It kept the peace, it protected my wife, it held a family together. But somewhere along the way, my silence stopped being a gift I was giving, and became a permission slip I was signing. Every insult I absorbed without a word taught Denise that insults were free. Every check I wrote without recognition taught her that my presence had no cost, and my dignity had no floor. People do not treat you according to who you are. They treat you according to what you allow. And when you allow disrespect long enough, you are not keeping the peace. You are subsidizing a war against yourself. And eventually, against the people you love. The moment those words landed on my daughter's face, I understood. Protection that requires your children to absorb contempt is not protection at all. Here's the second thing. Respect is not a courtesy, it is infrastructure. Everything in that extended family, the loans, the tuition, the holidays, the grace, was standing on a foundation Denise never bothered to inspect. because she assumed it would hold no matter how much weight she threw on it. It held for 17 years. Then one open palm brought it all down. That's how it always goes. The people who lose the most are rarely destroyed by their enemies. They're destroyed by their own certainty that the people carrying them will carry them forever, no matter how they're treated. If there is someone quietly holding up a corner of your life right now, a spouse, a parent, a sibling, a friend, go and see them. Actually see them. Because grace that is never acknowledged eventually stops feeling like grace to the person giving it. It starts feeling like invisibility. And nobody stays invisible forever. And here's the last thing, the one that took me longest to accept. Walking away from cruelty is not the same as becoming cruel. When Denise begged at that table, some part of me had waited 17 years for exactly that moment. And when it finally came, I discovered I didn't want it. I didn't need her tears. I didn't need her ruin. I needed the door closed. There is a difference between revenge and boundaries, and it's this. Revenge needs the other person to suffer. A boundary only needs them to be elsewhere. Ethan's clumsy handwritten note proved something I'll hold on to for the rest of my life. That consequences, delivered without hatred, can teach what 17 years of tolerance never could. The adults in that story got exactly what they built. The child got a second chance, and my daughters got to watch their father defend them without ever raising his voice. If they remember one thing from that summer, I hope it's this. You can be gentle and immovable at the same time. In fact, that's the only way gentleness survives. 17 years of silence. 17 years of stepping back. 17 years of writing checks and keeping the peace and staying in the background of a family that never bothered to look close enough to see who was actually holding everything together. And in the end, all it took was one slap, one smile, and the quiet, unhurried decision of a man who finally stopped protecting the wrong people. My name is Derek Coleman. I'm 49 years old. I live in Ballantyne, Charlotte, North Carolina, and every single person in my house carries my name on purpose. That's what a real father does. If this story moved you, do me one favor before you go. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story, and drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from, and tell me this. Have you ever stayed silent to keep the peace? And what did that silence cost you? I read every comment, and your stories are the reason this channel exists. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that respect is not optional. I will see you in the next one. Author's note. This story is a work of narrative storytelling, written, edited, and narrated by our human creative team. It is inspired by real experiences shared with us, and by the everyday family dynamics so many of us quietly live through. Names, places, and identifying details have been changed to protect privacy, and certain events have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. Any resemblance to specific individuals is coincidental. The reflections and opinions expressed here are the personal perspective of the author. Thank you for listening, and for treating the people who carry you with the respect they've earned.